My dear children, and again the branches of psychology, but today I am explaining health psychology, clinical and counseling psychology, industrial and organizational psychology, educational and school psychology, and sports psychology also. So now, first, health psychology. So what is health? You have to know, children, first. And WHO said health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being. Remember, children, physical, mental and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. So not only physical, our mental and social well-being are also important. So now, what is health psychology and what are the roles of health psychologist? And health psychology focuses on the role of psychological factors in the development, prevention and treatment of illness. And you know, areas of interest for a health psychologist are stress. So what are the different types of stress and what is stress? And how can we manage stress? What are the different types of coping mechanism? That means how can we adapt with our environment, how we cope with a particular situation. And what are the various consequences of stress, various sources of stress. And the patient-doctor relationship. And health promoting behavior also. And health damaging behavior. And now the other role of health psychologist, you know, evaluating the role of behavior in the causes of illness. You know, suppose the coronary heart disease is related to our behavior, such as, you know, smoking, various kinds of food intake, and many cancer also related to behavior. Yes, such as, you know, alcohol consumption. And now predicting unhealthy behavior also. And how can we change our behavior? How can we reduce stress? And preventing illness also. And various kinds of health promoting behavior and health damaging behavior. What is frustration? What are the sources of frustration? How can we manage frustration? And the relationship between frustration and aggression. And frustration may be one of the cause of aggression and one of the effect of aggression also. Yes, so the relationship between frustration and aggression. So now next, you know, children, is one of the important branch or subfield of psychology, you know, clinical psychology and counseling psychology. Now, what is clinical psychology? And clinical psychology deals with, you know, causes, treatment and prevention of different types of psychological disorders. So what is psychological disorder? Class 12, the chapter 4, you know, psychological disorders. And you will read, you know, various kinds of psychological disorder. And when we call, the person is suffering particular disorder. Yes. So disorder means when the symptom just affect our day-to-day life, our social life, our occupational life. And you know, such as various kinds of psychological disorders is anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, depression, bipolar and related disorder. Yes, and in clinical psychology, the important part, you know, the intervention. Yes. Various kinds of therapy also. And now a related area is also counseling. The main concern of this related field, you know, is to improve everyday functioning by helping people and solve problems in daily life and cope more effectively with challenging life situation. Yes. And now clinical psychologist and help people by diagnosing the form of abnormality. Yes. So now there is a difference between clinical psychologist and psychiatrist. Yes, remember children and listen carefully. A clinical psychologist has a degree in psychology. Yes, MA or MSc, MPhil, PhD. Yes, which includes intensive training in treating people with psychological disorders. That means clinical psychologist has a degree in psychology, but psychiatrist has a medical degree. Is MBBS, then MD. And psychiatrist can prescribe medicines. And clinical psychologist can't prescribe medicine. Yes, only provide various kinds of therapy. Yes, so clinical psychologist again and repeat the same thing, has a degree in psychology, but psychiatrist has a medical degree. And clinical psychologist can't prescribe medicine, but psychiatrist can prescribe medicine. Yes. And next, children. First of all, again, what is counseling psychology? A latter part of this chapter, and you will know about the difference between clinical psychology and counseling psychology. And the work of the counseling psychologist is similar to that of the clinical psychologist. Yes. And they may use psychotherapy. And counseling psychologists are often consulted by people with specific questions. And such as, the choice of career or educational programs. And counseling psychologists may make extensive use of psychological tests. Yes, to measure aptitude, interest, personality characteristics, etc. Yes. And the other thing, an American psychologist Whitmer opened the first psychological clinic in 1896 with a specific focus on helping children who had learning disabilities. Learning disabilities. Yes. Like, dyslexia. And Whitmer, who first introduced the term clinical psychology in 1907. Yes, only for your information. Yes. Now, children, next industrial and organizational psychology is another important branch. Yes. And industrial and organizational psychology is a branch of psychology, that applies psychological theories and principles to organization. Yes, is very much important. And deals with workplace behavior and working condition also. And focusing on both the workers and organizations. Yes. And the areas of industrial and organizational psychologist, employee selection. Yes, that means right people for right place. And organizational development. And psychologists who work in this area help improve, organization. Yes. And other important, training and development. And identify the training need also. And conflict management. And what are the causes of organizational stress? Other important part, employee motivation, employee satisfaction, and commitment. And what are the important characteristics of a good leader? Yes. And professionals in this field may also use psychological principles to help keep workers motivated. That means motivation, satisfaction is related and important for organization also. And what are the sources and factors of satisfaction? What are the consequences of dissatisfaction? Yes, an organizational culture, an organizational structure are all the parts of, industrial and organizational psychology. Now, next, children, educational psychology is another important educational psychology and school psychology nowadays. And educational psychology studies how people of all ages learn and help develop instructional methods and materials used to train people in both educational and work setting. Yes. And now the school psychologist is related field. Yes, school psychologist. And what are the role of school psychologist? And school psychology focuses on designing programs that promote intellectual, social, and emotional development of children. Yes, including those with special needs. And listen to students' concerns about their academic part, emotional, and social problem also. Improve parent-teacher relationship and help students process their problems and make proper goal. Yes. And the main part, the school psychology, the academic area, career, and social and emotional development also. Yes. And the important part nowadays, the school psychology. And they try to apply knowledge of psychology in our school setting. And now, next, sports psychology. And sports psychology applies psychological principles to improve sports performance by enhancing their motivation. And sports psychology is a relatively new field. And just and last Olympic, the Simon Biles said, mental health is also important for sports persons. Yes. So now, how they manage stress, how they improve their performance, how they reduce their anxiety, all are important. Yes. And now some other branches of psychology, and aviation psychology, space psychology, military psychology, forensic psychology, and managerial psychology, community psychology, etc. And now military psychology. And military, this is the greatest power of our country. Yes. And application of psychology in defense agency is of important part. And because, for employee selection of different levels, for designing appropriate training programs, And other important, leadership qualities and preparing or designing program to learn leadership qualities and called officer-like qualities. Yes. And conducting research studies to solve some problems like, tension, stress management, etc. Okay. And all other branches are important. All other branches. The last class also, cognitive psychology, biological psychology, neuropsychology, developmental, social, cross-cultural, environmental, and now I have explained, today health psychology, clinical and counseling psychology, industrial, educational, and sports psychology. These are the branches or subfields of psychology. Now, children, thank you.